Sentry mode activated. Target acquired.
Hey there hunters, and welcome back to the Gunners Guild. Today is another Remnant day. Now since the DLC is due in 2 months, I want to go over what the current meta sets are, or at least what are the go-to sets. Meta's kind of a bad word here because honestly just about everything in this game is pretty well balanced and work really well. So feel free to disagree or use whatever you like, but these are just kind of like the go-to setups for now, and then you can branch off from there. Let's start off with the classic sniper setup. Obviously we're going to be using a sniper rifle as our long gun, and handgun will be the hunter's pistols. This is what we're going to be building around. Both of these guns are bolt action, far range, high crit weapons. Since they're bolt action, it means you only have one round in the clip and you're going to have to reload after every single shot. Good news is that this is kind of abusable. For the mods, we don't actually have a ton of options. The first mod we want here is Hunter's Mark for sure. It gives us 20% more crit chance and wall hacks for 30 seconds, or 36 if you have the trait. Since snipers already have a base crit of 20 and there's a trait for 25, we're going to have a 65% chance to crit, which is pretty insane. The other mod slot is replaceable, but Song of Swords is for more damage. It's just the easiest to fit in. You just slap on 2 buffs and you're good to go, just keep shooting. You can run some other buffs if you want to help in a pinch, like Riftwalker, which is an amazing get out of jail free card mod, or Flicker Cloak, which is essentially a Vitality Mantle. Damage dealing mods are not really going to do a whole lot compared to your sniper, so I wouldn't really focus on those. So with the armor sets, we have 2 options that best suit these clip sizes. The first is the Slayer armor. With all 3 pieces of Slayer on, you get a 30% damage bonus for the first shot after a reload, which is basically all the time because we have to reload after every shot. This way we're always going to have the damage boost. It's a lot larger than you may think because armor stats work a little differently than traits or trinkets. Armors are multiplicative bonuses that are going to apply to everything after the fact, whereas traits and trinkets are added as part of the base. So a plus 30% damage here is going to be a lot more than like Ring of Balance or Ring of Supremacy, which would add up to 35%. The other bonus for Slayer set is that it gets you 10% reload speed just for having 1 piece on, which is great because reload speed is going to be your most important stat when you have a clip size of 1. Your other option here is the Bandit set. Now if you played Monster Hunter, this is basically spare shot armor. 35% chance to not consume your bullet when you fire is pretty dang nice. The DPS is certainly comparable to Slayer due to not having to waste time to reload as well when that proc hits. It's a 35% chance to basically do double damage, and it's a great multiplier. Either one of these sets work, but if you want to keep that ADD in check and see some of those big ass numbers, go for Slayer. Good RNG on the Bandit set will put that ahead though. Bandit also has the added bonuses of being of light encumbrance, whereas Slayer is medium, so Bandit does get better rolls. For trinkets, you definitely want the Gunslinger Charm as your amulet. 20% reload speed is essentially a multiplicative modifier compared to something like Heart of Darkness's flat 20% damage, which is only added to the base. Trust me, you want reload speed. Now for the ring, you definitely want Empowering Loop as your choice. Since we don't really have a fire rate, it's basically free 25% damage, which is the largest buff you're going to get. The second ring, you have kind of a lot of options on. So the Stone of Balance, flat 15% damage, no strings attached, pretty good. The Akari Warband is technically better DPS because it's 15% crit and crit damage when you dodge, but it's only got a 10-second duration and you can't refresh it until it expires, unfortunately, so it's not always going to be up, though that is getting fixed in the DLC. It's still solid though. Heartseeker is another great option. Crit damage seems good. That's again just a small additive multiplier, so you're going to be doing the same damage with this as you would be with like Stone of Balance, except only when you crit. The good news is that it gives you a 100% crit chance on enemies that haven't spotted you yet, so for clearing maps it's pretty amazing. Just not going to be embedding you some bosses. Ring of Supremacy is always a good choice because, you know, if you don't get hit, it's flat 20% all damage boost. Fantastic. And then we have the Devouring Loop, a 6% chance to do 4 times damage. Now, a special note on this, that 4 times damage is 4 times your crit damage, which when you have all your traits and jerky active is 205%, so you're basically doing 8 times the normal damage with this thing. Now, our crits are usually around 50%, it's like 40 to 65, so effectively there's like a 3% chance to do 8 times damage. It turns out to be a pretty good boost. It's like 15% damage or more over many hits, but it's multiplicative rather than added bonus, so it's better than some of our other options here. However, it's entirely up to luck, so it's not for everyone. Now the other thing you can do here if you have the Black Rose from survival mode is use that along with 2 pieces of Bandit armor and 1 piece of Slayer. This will get you that 30% spare shot chance along with a 10% reload speed from Slayer and an extra 7% damage boost on the reload, so it's a little extra gimme there. It's about the same as running 3-piece of Bandit and the Gunslinger charm, but it's just another option you have. I wouldn't run this with 2-piece Slayer or 1-piece Bandit because the Bandit passive is just some extra ammo and pickup. It's not really worth losing 20% reload speed for not having Gunslinger charm. And if you want to use this setup but you don't like the sniper approach, the Spore Bloom is a shotgun equivalent which packs a huge punch as well, so feel free to run that in place of sniper. Crossbow is a fine alternative if you don't want to alert enemies, and the Devastator is also nice but ultimately inferior to the sniper in this setup because you're not going to be landing all the Devastator bolts at the same target, unless some bosses. Now, as our traits go, eventually you're going to want everything, and it's not that hard to do that. But early on, focus on your damage. Kingslayer, Exploiter, Swift Hands, Mind's Eye. This holds true for basically everything except melee, where that kind of wants stamina and melee damage trait, obviously. But yeah, traits, just grab everything. Alright, so that's the one-shot setup. It's pretty self-explanatory. You shoot, headshot, monster's dead. Let's move on to the next one. Crit spam with Radiant armor. Okay, so this is a bit more difficult setup to run, but it's very, very fun. Let's start with the armor because that's what we're building around here. The Radiant scent has the perk Momentum, which means every time you crit, you get a stack of Momentum for 2.5 seconds. That increases your crit chance by 2.5%. Basically, 25% crit chance and crit damage when it's active. This is a huge damage multiplier. So the name of the game is to crit and don't stop critting. Obviously, we're gonna need some automatic weapons. So the first gun is our SMG, which is fantastic gun, high rate of fire, good damage, free mod slot, perfect fit. Our long weapon is going to be, well, another SMG, the typewriter. You can use the assault rifle as well, but the typewriter has a much larger clip size. Downsides of the typewriter is that the reload speed is atrocious and you can drop your momentum during the reload if you don't have a lot of reload speed, so your choice, but I like the typewriter. Now for your mods, I think you can see the first one coming, Hunter's Mark again. I mean, it's more crit, man. More crit means more stacks, and with this way, with the full momentum setup, we're gonna have 75% chance to crit. The other mod we want is Swarm. Why? Because it hits a lot, and those hits count towards momentum because they can crit, and they also get boosted damage off momentum too. It's perfect to use when you need a reload to keep your momentum stacks up. There's really not much room for other mods here. Nothing's really gonna help play off that crit thing. For trinkets, we're rather limited as well. For the amulet, you can run Leto's amulet to take down you from a heavy roll to a medium roll if you don't like fat rolls. Remember, you can neutral dodge just fine in heavy armor as well if you need to dodge. Gunslinger charm is probably your best in slot here because the fire rate and reload speed are both super important. It's just great DPS boost here. There's not much reason to use a black rose on this set unless you want like one piece of Akari for that, 7.5% fire rate, reload speed, evade speed, and boost evade window. Not going to be better than Gunslinger, but it's still an option. For rings, still not a whole lot of options here. You're going to want Devouring Loop since we're all about them crits, and then you can probably and should run Akari Warband, which is 15% crit and crit damage when you dodge. And we're going to be sitting at 90% crit with this and Hunter's Mark active. That's ridiculous. Plus, you want to be neutral dodging a lot in heavy armor anyway, so this should have pretty good uptime. You can run Braided Thorns instead if you'd like, but it's not going to be very helpful on bosses. Also, the standard rings help too, Stone of Balance, Ring of Supremacy, stuff like that. I mean, this is basically it for Radiant crits. If you're just spamming high fire rate weapons, get mad damage, and just keep going. So, let's move along. Alright, Osseus Dots, other set we're building around the armor first. This is a very flexible setup. First is that we want to use 2 pieces of Osseus, 1 piece of Leto's, and the Black Rose. Why? Because math. Osseus armor grants damage bonus if you keep attacking enemy up to 35% more damage, and the attack speed's pretty nice too. 1 piece of Leto's gives you 15% extra damage to enemies who are targeting you. If you're solo, that's everything. And group, it's great because if you have aggro, everyone in the party will deal 15% more damage to it. And if you have Aggressor's Bane to pull aggro, it's just peachy. Anyway, since armors are multiplicative bonuses, these two together actually net you a 55% damage increase, which is why it's way better than running basically anything else that isn't Gunslinger's Charm. So the way we make the set work is by dots, because dots count as hits and therefore will keep your Osseus set up constantly. We do have a number of ways to do dots as well. First is that you can use a melee weapon like Smolder or the Claws to apply a dot. This won't require any guns, so you're free to use whatever you want, just bask in that juicy damage bonus from there, but it is melee. On the gun side, Spitfire and Devastator both have built-in mods that apply fat dots, so you can use those, or you can use pretty much any weapon with an open mod slot and run Hot Shot or Wildfire Shot. Up to you, just make sure you want to have at least one weapon with a dot, then you're free to use basically everything. Now, like I said, it's pretty flexible, so things like Ring of Supremacy, Empowering Loop for that fat damage, Razor Stone for melee dots, Stone of Balance, Stockpile Circlet, Provisioner's Ring, Akari Warband, Compulsion Loop, whatever. You're free to use whatever you want. This set is just here for that fat 55% damage buff with the dot setup. Just go crazy, everything's gonna hurt. Now I use this for my standard melee setup as well because it's got a nice damage boost, which also helps the dots applied with Smolder and the Razor Stone. Also, the 5% attack speed edges out Scrapper just barely. Alright, so let's move on to my favorite setup, the Mod Power setup, another incredibly flexible setup. Did I say setup enough? So the general idea is that you're going to be using weapons mods more than anything. So let's start with the armor, since again that's where we're going to be building around. We have two armors we can use. The Cultist armor generates just a fuck ton of mod power. It's like 50% more. It's insane. It also has passive mod generation for both your weapons. Okay, totally not OP. The other armor is the Labyrinth armor from the Swamps of Corsus DLC. This increases mod damage by 50%, so you can have mod damage or mod generation, take your pick depending on what kind of mods you want to use. For the amulet, there's one clear winner, which is Galenic Charm, 30% mod damage. Note this has no effect on summons or buff mods. So if you're using those, you may want something else like Black Rose or Heart of Darkness, Gunslinger Charm, anything else really. But for mod damage setups, hands down, Galenic Charm. For the rings, Supremacy, almost always a must-have. It's all damage, which does include mods. It's one of the few rings that actually boost mod damage. I mean, you could run Ring of the Admiral too, but I understand not wanting to take 300% more damage. The other ring that's super handy is Gift of the Iskall. It grants passive mod generation like the Cultist armor, which does stack with the Cultist armor. And of course, your typical damage dealing rings also apply here as well. Now, where the set really opens up is the weapons, because again, it's an open field. You can use anything you want. You can run summons with Cultists, go for it. You want to do buffs and heals, debuffs, just take your two favorite weapons, slap on a mod, and go. Plus, you can change mods whenever you want. You can adapt to whatever you're fighting. Now, on the DPS side, go with Labyrinth Armor and Galenic Charm. Things like Eye of the Storm, Devastator, they just do insane damage with their mods. Spitfire and Defiler, amazingly strong as well for being their handguns. And of course, open mod slots for like Unstable Quills, Breath of the Desert, Explosive Shot, Wildfire Shot. Their damage is fucking insane, dude. The mod power setups probably won't compete in DPS compared to Sniper and Radiant setups, just because our weapons are going to be relatively weak until we charge up our mods, whereas those builds just have constant damage uptime. But mod power setups are just way more flexible, and being able to swap mods whenever is just a lot of fun. These are definitely my favorite builds, but that's just me. Alright, so those are the four main setups we have right now, but I do want to give one more honorable mention, which is a build that needs more skills to play, and that is Shotgun Swapper. So this setup revolves around the shotgun and a revolver. You want to rebind your weapon swap key to a key that's easily acceptable for both shooting and mod use. So go find one. The trick here is to shoot and swap at the same time, which will cancel the recoil animation for the shotgun and let you fire faster than intended. You can also use mods like Breath and Quills to swap and cancel their animations quicker as well, making those even faster. It's a very niche setup, I know, but dude, it's so much fun. For the armor, kind of a mixed bag. You can kind of use whatever you want, but shotgun generates the most mod power in the game, especially on shotgun swap setup. So you're focusing on mod damage here as well with like Quills and Breath. Now for ease of use here, I use the Void armor set because it boosts all our damage, so weapons and mods. Depending on the mods, I will use Galenic Charm for 30% mod damage, but I'll also trade that for a Black Rose to run a piece of Letos as well, because again, that's more all damage. For the rings, Ring of Supremacy, obvious, all damage, and the real icing on the cake that holds this set together is the Provisioner's Ring. This will reload our stowed emmos, basically letting us never have to reload while we swap and use mods. This whole setup is kind of wacky, but it works, and pretty well at that. It's just kind of a bit of jank and exploiting animations for sure. Alright, so that was kind of a lot to talk about. These are at least my current meta sets. I feel free to not use them, just giving you ideas and presets to get ready for the DLC that launches in August. So yeah, thank you all for watching, and good luck out there, hunters, and whatever you may be hunting.